Welcome to Audiobook 365 Stories.
She sat by the window, looking out at the evening. Her head rested against the curtains, and she smelled the dusty fabric. She felt tired. Not many people walked by. She heard the footsteps of the man from the last house, going home. His steps clacked on the concrete and then crunched on the path beside the new red houses. There used to be a field there where they played with other kids every evening. But a man from Belfast bought the field and built bright brick houses instead of their little brown ones. They all used to play together in that field. The Davinas, the Waters, the Dunns, little Keo who had trouble walking, she and her brothers and sisters. Ernest, her older brother, didn't play because he was too grown up. Sometimes their father would chase them out of the field with his stick, but little Keo would always warn them when he saw their father coming. Those were happier times. Her father wasn't as bad back then, and her mother was still alive. But now, she and her siblings were all grown up, and her mother had passed away. Tizzy Dunn and the Waters had also moved away to England. Everything changes. Now, she was going to leave home like the others. Home! She looked around the room, seeing all the familiar things she had cleaned every week for many years. She wondered where all the dust came from. Maybe she wouldn't see these familiar things again, things she never imagined being separated from. Despite all those years, she still didn't know the name of the priest whose old photo hung on the wall above the broken piano, next to a colorful picture of promises. He was a friend of her father's from school. When visitors asked about the photo, her father would casually say, "He's in Melbourne now." She agreed to leave her home. Was that smart? She thought about it carefully. At home, she had a place to live and food to eat. She knew everyone there. But she had to work a lot, both at home and at her job. What would people say at work when they found out she ran away with a guy? Maybe they'd say she was foolish, and they'd find someone else to take her place. Miss Gavin would probably be happy. She always seemed a bit mean, especially when others were around. "Miss Hill, can't you see these ladies are waiting? Hurry up, Miss Hill, please." She wouldn't cry much about leaving her job. But in her new home, in a faraway place she didn't know, things would be different. She would be married, Evelyn. People would treat her well then. She wouldn't be treated like her mother was. Even though she was over 19, she sometimes felt scared of her father's anger. She knew it was what made her heart beat fast. When they were growing up, her father didn't yell at her like he did to Harry and Ernest, because she was a girl. But recently, he had started threatening her, saying mean things he wouldn't say if her mother were alive. And now, she had nobody to protect her. Ernest was dead, and Harry, who worked in a church, was usually away in the countryside. Plus, arguing about money every Saturday night was exhausting. She gave all her wages, 7 shillings, and Harry sent what he could. But getting money from her father was tough. He said she spent it foolishly, that she didn't think. He wouldn't give her his hard-earned money to waste. He was usually in a bad mood on Saturday nights. Eventually, he'd give her the money and ask if she planned to buy food for Sunday. Then she'd rush out to buy groceries, holding her purse tightly as she squeezed through the crowds. She worked hard to keep the house in order and make sure the two young kids she looked after went to school and ate their meals on time. It was hard work, a tough life, but now that she was about to leave it behind, she didn't think it was all bad. She was about to start a new life with Frank. Frank was really nice, strong, and kind. She was going with him on a night boat to be his wife and live with him in Buenos Aires, where he had a home waiting for her. She remembered the first time she saw him. He was staying in a house on the main road she visited. It felt like just a few weeks ago. He stood at the gate, his hat pushed back and his hair falling over his face. They got to know each other, and he used to walk her home from work every evening. He took her to see a play called The Bohemian Girl, and she felt very happy sitting with him in a new part of the theater. He loved music and even sang a little. People knew they were dating, and when he sang about a girl who loves a sailor, she always felt happy and confused at the same time. He used to call her Poppins for fun. At first, it was exciting for her to have a boyfriend, and then she started to like him. He told her stories about faraway places. He started as a deck boy on a ship, earning £1 a month, sailing to Canada. He told her the names of the ships he worked on and the places he visited. He sailed through the Straits of Magellan and told her scary stories about the people who lived there, called the Patagonians. He had a good life in Buenos Aires, he said, and came back to their country just for a visit. But her father found out about their relationship and told her not to talk to him. "I know these sailor guys," he said. One day, her father argued with Frank, and after that, she had to meet Frank secretly. As the evening grew darker outside, she sat by the window, resting her head against the curtain, smelling the dusty fabric. She heard a street musician playing far away. She recognized the tune. It was strange that it played that very night, reminding her of the promise she made to her mother to keep the family together as long as she could. She remembered her mother's last night, hearing sad Italian music outside her room. The musician was told to leave, but given 6 pence. She remembered her father coming back into the room, wearing her mother's hat, trying to make the children laugh. Those Italians, why do they come here? As she thought, the sad image of her mother's life affected her deeply, that life of ordinary sacrifices ending in madness. She shivered as she heard her mother's voice repeating a strange phrase, "Daravan Saran, Daravan Saran." Feeling suddenly afraid, she stood up. Escape. She had to get away. Frank would help her. He would give her a new life, maybe even love. But she wanted to be happy. She deserved happiness. Frank would hold her tight and protect her. He would rescue her. She stood in the busy station, holding his hand as he spoke to her about the journey repeatedly. Soldiers with their brown bags filled the station. She saw the large boat through the wide doors, its portholes lit up. She didn't reply. Her cheek felt cold, and she prayed silently for guidance from God. The boat let out a long, sad whistle. If she went, she'd be with Frank in Buenos Aires by tomorrow. Their tickets were already booked. Could she still change her mind after all he had done for her? Her distress made her feel sick, and she kept silently praying. A bell rang loudly in her heart. He grabbed her hand. Come. Her heart was filled with fear. He was pulling her towards the sea, ready to drown her. She held on to the iron railing tightly. Come. No. It couldn't be done. She held on to the railing firmly. Amidst the chaos, she cried out in anguish. Evelyn! Evie! He hurried past the barrier, calling for her to follow. People shouted at him to keep going, but he continued to call for her. She looked at him blankly, like a helpless animal. Her eyes showed no love, farewell, or recognition.